What have you always wanted to know about Boise State Public Radio? Join us for another round Wednesday, March 19th at Mad Swede Brew Hall in downtown Boise from 6 to 8 p.m. Learn more about our operations, news content, and our service mission. We welcome your questions and look forward to sharing more about what we do here at Boise State Public Radio. More details can be found on our website at boisestatepublicradio.org.
More Idaho Matters now from the studios of Boise State Public Radio News. I'm Gemma Gaudet. As we approach the end of winter, the Sun Valley Museum of Art is celebrating by sharing 5 unique perspectives on the season. The exhibit, titled Snow Show, Winter Now, explores our human relationship with nature and how we see ourselves represented in it. Now, joining us now to talk more about the exhibition is Courtney Gilbert, Assistant Director and Curator of the Sun Valley Museum of Art, as well as one of the featured artists, Catherine Opie. I want to welcome both of you to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Catherine, Courtney, let me start with you. Can you talk to us a little bit about where the inspiration for the exhibit came from?
Yeah, we started planning this exhibition actually not all that long ago when we found out that Sun Valley is going to be hosting the World Cup Alpine Championships in just about 10 days from now. I was familiar with a body of work by an artist based between Boise who grew up between Boise and Sun Valley and is based now between Ketchum and Jackson, Sophia Jaramillo, who has been making these wonderful photographs, reimagining sort of vintage like 1930s to 1950s photographs of ski culture, many of which were made here, but centering athletes of color, models of color, and kind of inviting us all to look at diversity on the slopes today. And then we started building out the exhibition. I co-curated it with our executive director, Jennifer Wells Green, and we were just absolutely thrilled that Kathy Opie was willing to share her amazing photographs made in Norway last winter with us as part of the show. She's the best known artist in the show, and we're really lucky to be able to have her in it.
So, Catherine, can you talk to us a little bit more about that? Because you've explored a lot of different landscapes through your photography. But as Courtney just mentioned, you're sharing portraits of mountains that you've taken in Norway. What drew you to this part of the world?
Yeah, thank you, Courtney, for including me in this show. It's actually the first time any museum has shown the new work of Norway. And what called me as I went to Norway for the very first time about 15 years ago, and it happened to be January. And I started showing with a gallerist in Oslo by the name of Peter Lund. And all of a sudden, this blue light that I was looking at that was like 2:00 in the afternoon was light that I had never imagined or seen before. And I'm familiar with winter. I grew up on Lake Erie in Sandusky, Ohio, so I know the deep blues of dusk and dawn, but this was a blue that I hadn't really ever thought about before. And so it called me back. I finally retired from teaching at UCLA after 27 years and didn't have to do admissions in the winter. And so off to Norway I went last February on a 20-day road trip.
And from what I understand, Catherine, the color blue was a really important part of your mountain series. Why was that?
Well, I think that artists have been looking at the color blue for a very long time. In fact, ironically, the New York Times had an incredible article about blue recently. And one of the things that I was thinking about in making portraits of mountains is that we push all of this identity onto places. And these mountains have existed long before boundaries or borders. And these mountains end up being named by us human beings, and these mountains are meant to be ascended. And I just thought it was time to make portraits of mountains as beings that have been there, that are part of our landscape, that we throw a lot of ideas around onto, and to also mourn the changing of our planet through the color blue, that the mountains in the snowfall, as we know, especially because I live in California, If the Sierras don't have the right amount of snow, we go into drought and we have extreme weather conditions. So it's a way to meditate about all of these things that are happening in our world and in our planet right now.
So, Catherine, talk to us a little bit more about the process, would you? Because I think it's an understatement to say that there are a lot of mountains in Norway. So,
Yeah.
how just a couple. So, how did you decide where you wanted to shoot?
Well, I'm a wanderer by nature. And so what I did was I mapped it out, but I'm not interested in telling you which mountains these are. They're all untitled
Mm,
because I just want them to be in themselves. And I do this with lots of bodies of work where I'm doing road trips and I'm not telling you where I am, but you kind of have to guess by the landscape, or photographing swamps and I'm not telling you the specificity of that swamp. But it took 20 days and I basically went from Trondheim to Oslo and I mapped out locations that had really incredible mountain ranges I wanted to explore, and I stayed in each location for 5 days. And then
and
I would photograph like for hours in the cold, and it was cold. It was 13 below a
well,
lot of the times.
oh, but you would photograph at certain times of the day, right?
Yeah, you go out, dawn happens. It's so hard to get up for dawn in Norway because it's at 11:30 a.m.
PM? Oh,
So you're not looking at a 6 a.m. or a 5 a.m.
yeah.
dawn. You're looking at dawn happening at 11 a.m. and then dusk is happening by, 1:45, 2 p.m. And so that range of time, I'm just in the car finding my location, setting up, and then I have maybe 15 minutes fleeting of capturing that blue that you
Oh,
see in the
wow.
museum.
So, Courtney, tell us about a few of the other artists that are featured in this exhibit right now.
Sure. Well, in addition to Sophia Jaramillo, we have work by Rob Reynolds, who's also based in Los Angeles. Rob made a really beautiful film in 2019 in northwestern Greenland. It's all filmed from a boat, these kind of very close views of icebergs and glaciers, narrated by a local Greenlandic fisherman who he speaks 7 languages, but in the film, he's speaking in his native dialect, talking about just the changes he's seen in his lifetime in the ice and in the weather. And the name of the
Hmm.
film is actually, the word for weather is knowledge. And the narrator uses this word sila multiple times in the film, which means both knowledge, wisdom, and weather in Greenlandic. And it's a really beautiful way of thinking about our connection to nature, and the changes that we're seeing. And then we have
Hmm.
light boxes made by the artist Mungo Thompson, and an installation by Ryan Bonilla, a Burton ambassador snowboard, who's also a photographer and filmmaker, who's snowboards at this amazing indoor snowboard and ski facility in northern New Jersey. So it's all of these really diverse kids from all over New York City who hang out inside to recreate together, which might be one way of thinking about the future of winter.
Yeah. So Catherine, you mentioned that you were an art professor at UCLA for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about the value of art education, because I think sometimes we focus so much on STEM, right? Rightfully so, but sometimes that art piece is so critical. I think to broadening all of our understanding of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you asked this because I actually took time to go to a local high school while I was in Idaho and talk to the AP art class about what are they thinking? Do you want to be future artists? Are your parents scared about you being a future artist? And I'm here to tell you that the arts are incredibly important, that they allow for critical dialogue and they allow for creativity to enter our world. And it's interesting. My son was going to end up being an orthopedic surgeon, and he switched over to art history. And
Oh,
he thought me as an artist would be upset, and I was like, "No, are you crazy?" And so One of the things that he was worried about was AI taking over all of this. And certainly a recent report said, go into the arts. Everybody, all the parents want the kids to go into the arts again, because that's where you're going to learn critical discourse and creativity and ability to problem solve. So we need to support the arts. Everybody's a philanthropist. Help that out. And yeah, it's very important.
Well, and it's interesting when you mention, going and talking with an AP art class. I have a son who's a junior in high school, and in Idaho, they are required to take art in high school, and so he really got into photography, and it's not something that he had ever picked up before, but it was interesting to watch him not just like take a picture, but actually learn about photography, right? And then going on these field trips and taking the pictures and incorporating what he learned, and then having discussion around it, and then having to put an entire portfolio together. I think it really engaged a part of his brain that he normally wouldn't have used during school.
That's amazing. So does he want to be a photographer?
He doesn't know what he wants to do, but he's only 16. So
But just so you know, one of the best undergraduate programs in the country for photography is Bard College. That is, that is a long-standing, great only undergraduate, no grad student photo program. So when you're looking at colleges, think about Bard if he really loves photography.
well, I appreciate that. Courtney, with just a couple minutes left, how important is it, do you think, to challenge our perspectives or really encourage us to reflect when it comes to art?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the best thing that art can do is ask us to see the world through somebody else's eyes, and ask us to reconsider our own kind of fixed opinions that we may or may not have, and introduce us to new worlds too. I mean, the installation that Ryan Bonilla created around this indoor ski facility opened up a whole new world that I knew nothing about to me. Yeah, and with Rob Reynolds, you get to kind of travel through fjords in Greenland, and yeah, it's I hope that the exhibition offers people, lots of different entries into what's both a celebration of winter, but also a look at how winter's changing. And I think Kathy's photographs do that so beautifully. They transport us at the same time that they ask us to kind of join her in pondering how this light in these mountains will change over the next 50 years or so or more.
Yeah, meditation.
And Courtney, how much? Oh, I was just going to ask, how much longer for folks to be able to see the exhibition?
The show's up through April 2nd. We're open Tuesday through Friday from 10 to 5, Saturdays 11 to 4. Free admission always. We've got free programs, a number of artist talks you can look at on our website coming up next week. And we're collaborating with a filmmaker out of Trout Lake, Washington, Brad Johnson, who does a lot of huge public artworks. And he's showing a film during World Cup on screens around town in collaboration with 5850 Fest, so people can see his take on sort of transporting us through and into glaciers and mountains around the world.
Well, thank you both so much. What a great conversation. We've been speaking with Courtney Gilbert, Assistant Director and Curator of the Sun Valley Museum of Art, along with Catherine Opie, one of the featured artists in the Snow Show Winter Now exhibition. This is the Idaho Matters podcast. I'm Gemma Gaudette.